Welcome to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. I'm Rebecca, your host, and together we'll explore the spirit of beauty, how beauty invites new possibilities, enlivens us to inhabit our innate creativity, and connects us more deeply with ourselves and with each other. We'll have conversations and share reflections that invite you into a frequency of gentleness, truth, and mystery. I'm so glad you're here. If you find the Liberating Beauty Podcast meaningful, please consider supporting our work. To donate, follow the link in the show notes to the Together in Beauty website, home to this podcast, along with other offerings to accompany you on your journey of spiritual becoming. Please subscribe, rate, and share this podcast wherever you listen. And as always, thank you for your support and for being here with us. Welcome back to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. I'm really grateful that we get to share this moment together. I've really been looking forward to today's episode and really bringing you into some of the ideas that we'll start to explore today. And in part because they're ideas that continue to show up again and again in my consciousness in various forms, which usually is a kind of note to self indicator of, yeah, this is something to put my attention on. So what that's been is my reflecting on how creativity in a lot of ways, like beauty, is a frequency more than a particular form. Because, often the way I kind of socialized into the idea of creativity was about the connection to a specific form. Some of the creative arts or the visual arts and music and dance and painting, which obviously are quite creative forms. But what's been kind of captivating my attention is how it becomes more and more clear that it's not about the form itself that is creative. Rather, it's the essence of creativity that could reveal itself through infinite forms that really excites me. And in a sense, this conversation, these thoughts, have been inspired by a growing awareness of what it feels like when I'm expressing my creativity, often in extremely mundane ways that under the guise of that other kind of way of thinking about creativity as the form itself, I never would have noticed or acknowledged or recognized as being creative, as expressing creatively. And yet the deeper I go into the essence of creativity, I realize that to be in union with creativity is available where, whenever we open to expressing who we truly are. So this topic, this exploration has so many layers and potentials. So what I decided was to do almost like a mini series of conversations around beauty and creativity, and to bring in a number of other voices and perspectives. So there'll be a series, like I say, of other folks I'll be in conversation with who will talk about how they come into contact with creativity and in beauty in their own lives. And I'm so excited for some of the guests that we'll be listening to and meeting in the coming weeks. And so today is, in a way, a starting point of sharing some of the ways that I'm noticing that creativity shows up and expresses in my life, and inviting you also to notice where and how and in what forms does your creativity start to surface and start to emerge, and how might you invite and nurture your creative spirit in everyday moments? And how does how does doing that add a subtle yet unmissable, is that a word? Texture to our lives when we invite in that creative essence of who we are. So yeah, it was interesting, and I was thinking about where and when I start to feel my creativity expressing, where are those places? And i I thought, you know what, let me start with just what is the felt sense in my body when I am creative, when I am creating, when I'm in conversation with creation. And I feel this an elevation. It's not about looking down at, it's a lightness. So as I notice a lightness and usually an excitement in my chest, I feel like and maybe it's release some of the normal thought patterns or fears or neuroses that weigh down this creative instinct when it's not the dominant energy that I'm in conversation with, but when I am, there's a lightness, there's a joyfulness, there's a presence of feeling like, oh yeah, this is what I should be doing. This is what I want to be doing right now. Like this feels like a flash of coming into contact with why I'm here right now, why I'm on the planet right now. And so that in some ways sounds very grandiose. So you may be surprised then to hear about what then have been some examples of when I come into contact with that feeling. So, and I'm going to start with, in some ways, the most mundane. I love it the most. And it's something that came in conversation literally just this morning with my daughter. She and I were talking about how when she gets bored, she starts to get what she calls wiggly hands. I almost experience it with her, like almost energy in her hands, and just they start moving about, they start wiggling about, and it's one way to try to move the energy, the bored energy out. And so she calls that wiggly hands. And I have an experience with my hands that I don't know, I wasn't connecting necessarily with the idea of wiggly hands or even that it's about boredom, but I notice for me when I start coming into contact with the frequency of creation and creativity, I start moving my hands around a lot. And she and I had also just talked the other day about different forms of dance, and she was talking about lyrical dance. And I said to her, Dessa, it's my daughter's name, Dessa, I feel like when I'm feeling creative, I get these lyrical hands. My hands start dancing. There's so much creativity that they need to express and be part of the conversation. If this were a video, you'd see me with the lyrical hands right now. And my daughter noticed that when I have lyrical hands, it's usually like my pinky coming in first and the other fingers following. It almost looks like wings, like creating wings. And I can tell when I'm doing that. It's like a note to self, like, oh yeah, cool. You're in that energy again, because there's so much joyfulness. It's so enlivening that you cannot contain it. It needs another place to go. It needs another form. And the lyrical hands are a place that I can just continue that expression, that experience, that levity of creativity within myself. So, like I say, there's nothing too mundane to bring us into greater awareness of when we are experiencing ourselves as creativity and how good it feels to allow that creativity to express as it wishes. You know, in the past, had I had my lyrical hands, and if I were in some kind of, I don't know, a meeting or presenting or something, I might ask my lyrical hands or just keep them by my side. And now I wouldn't do that, because I wouldn't want to abandon in some ways what feels true. That creativity sometimes spills over into gestures that are so innocent that it feels important to let them be as they are. So that was the first thing I thought of when I thought about, okay, Where is creativity showing and expressing and in what forms in my everyday experience? The next thing I thought of, and this is something it's been incubating in my mind for a long time. I think there's probably a whole episode. This example, this topic probably warrants a whole episode, maybe maybe a whole series in and of itself. It's about how I experience and come into contact with a specific type of creative energy, frequency in endings. And in particular, I'm putting a spotlight on the endings that I accompany in when somebody is dying. So one of the things that I have started to do in the world, whether you call it a death doula or spiritual accompaniment, is to be by the side of people as they are dying in the last 6 months of life, or sometimes quite literally in the days and hours before somebody transitions. And I would say the way I experience creativity in the dying process is been an extremely profound teacher, one of the most profound. So, for example, right now I meet with a woman who is in the last 6 months of life, but she's, like I say, very lucid. And there's a feeling of when I am with somebody where at this point in their life, they're not receiving curative medical care. It's purely pain management, palliative care. There's a very unique feeling of there's nowhere to go. There's only this moment, which can sound really depressing, like, "Oh, we've run out of options, or we've run out of choices," but that's actually not how it feels when I'm with people in that situation. What it feels like is there's a ripeness, there's a humility, there's a feeling of what's the point in faking anything anymore? Here we are. There's nothing to prove. There's not it's not about the next goal we'll achieve. It's not about the next milestone. It's this full moment of being with. And that looks very different for different people. And certainly not everybody in that situation wants to or feels a fullness of that moment. There's a lot of folks who I've sat with, a lot of anxiety, not just about their dying process, but it doesn't mean that all of their other worries and concerns and cares go away just because they are where they are in their own lifespan. There has been a remarkable bravery, sometimes playfulness, and what they're willing to do, that I just wonder if at other points in their life they wouldn't. For example, this woman who I'm meeting with now is a singer, and she's a teacher and a singer, and she loves singing, and sometimes we'll sing together. And I wonder at other points in her life, did she just start singing with somebody that literally like the first day we met, we sang together in her room. And I wonder, like, would she have done that at another point in her life? And like, what a joy. Something that she enjoys so much, something that I enjoy so much that is suddenly available when why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we enjoy that most simple, wholesome experience of singing together in that moment? But my guess is that at other points in her life, and certainly at other points in my life, I wasn't singing with people who I just met within an hour. That particular experience has brought forward a bravery in me because I love singing, and I've kind of come out of practice and confidence with that, with music and singing in my own life, and she's really invited me to come back into that because basically it's like, well, why wouldn't you? It's like it becomes as simple as that. It takes away all of the nonsense and the noise and the fear and just says, okay. why don't we do this? Why don't we do this now? Because there's nowhere else to go, and this is what we have. So to be with the creative experience that's available, in this case that takes the form of singing with this woman, has been it's it's been so instructive, because I start noticing other places in my life where there's an instinct to do something that's so pure and so joyful, but I don't do it. Imagine, I'm just imagining you listening to this, and perhaps you can think of places in your life where also you're like, yeah, why am I not doing that thing? What's holding me back? So there's that. So this is this is one example of where at the end of someone's life, they're not at the end, but we're nearing the end, and some of the guardrails go down, and we're experiencing creativity in a new way. But then there's, for me, something different that happens when I'm with someone at the end, and the last few hours, that I don't. It's hard to fully describe it. What I can say, in the instances of when I've experienced that, it becomes very difficult to be able to distinguish between beginnings and endings. And I've heard doulas, one doula I'm thinking of in particular, who says, yeah, I'm not a death doula or a birth doula, I'm a life doula. Kind of moving away from this duality of beginnings and endings, and to just to being. I'm a doula to the being. And I don't know that I could really understand that consciously when she said that to me. But the experience of being with someone at the very end of life brings that feeling of, I don't know if we're beginning or ending, or what the sequencing, into a knowingness. And I experienced that coming together of beginnings, endings, new possibilities as creative in a way that I would not pretend to understand. And I want to also say that when I had the experience of being with my own parents through their dying processes, I didn't have this experience around creativity. I didn't experience their dying process as a creative process. So I don't want to give the impression, if you're out there and you're listening and you are sitting with someone, a loved one, someone you care about, who is actively dying, that somehow you're not experiencing the full thing if it doesn't feel like a creative experience. Not at all. I remember that feeling in awe of something I could not understand, but felt as almost a feeling of, now that I've experienced this, nothing will ever be the same. It was so mind-blowing. And yet, I say, I wasn't coming into contact with that experience as a creative experience for a number of reasons, grief, exhaustion, just to name a few. But now, when I have the gift of sitting with people, and it is, of course, it's a little different when it's not your parent. There is the feeling of, oh wow, I've just made contact with these life cycles and mystery. We don't really understand what happens with people when they die, not fully. And, I watch the facial expressions of people as they are actively dying, and I have no idea where they are. I have no idea what they're coming into contact with, but it's just like, it's in some ways like watching an infant when they're sleeping, and they move very quickly through a smile to a pout to a frown to a cry to some kind of joyfulness, and you don't really know where they are, and there's no reason to try to figure it out. But it's so awe-inspiring to be in that presence, and it enlivens me to want to be in the world even more. It's funny, it's not because I'm closer to death that somehow I fear it at all. In death, it affirms life. There's a grounding in ending. There's a grounding that makes me want to even live more fully, more creatively, more bravely into every single moment of my life that's available, because it's becomes so clear how fleeting our moments are. And I believe that when we can step into bravery and courage and honesty, we allow that creativity and what it feels like as a beautiful expression of who we are to take hold even and more powerfully. So there's so much more there. There's so much more to share from such a place of deep reverence for what dying shows us, teaches us, offers us about living, that I'm, yeah, excited to talk more about in future episodes. But that was, again, another example of what it feels like when I notice how creativity can show up and what kind of unshackles it from any fear or shame or insecurity, because it's like, well, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you be with what's here right now? So that's another example. And the last example I have is it's about connecting the frequency and experience of inviting in intuition into everyday life. So perhaps I'll start with saying that to me, I experience the frequencies of intuition, beauty, and creativity similarly. They're not this obviously they're not the same thing, and yet sometimes it can be hard for me to tease out which is which. So I don't know if that's a caveat or just a FYI or whatnot, but I'll say that. But let me share what I mean when I talk about intuition being another expression of creativity. So when I'm working with, whether it's organizations or individuals with spiritual accompaniment, it feels like such a gift, such a honest, true, joyful expression of my purpose when I allow myself to bring in multiple ways of knowing and sensing what I'm bringing in, what I'm taking in, what I'm noticing in the world as I'm walking side by side with another individual through their spiritual journey. Because so often we're asked to provide feedback that's grounded, strategic, logical, and I place a lot of value on that. A lot of value on that. I love that part of what I bring into these encounters is a scientific mind also. But I feel in myself limited when I don't allow access to this other form of information. Fear that, okay, if I'm the thing I'm saying I'm intuiting, is that bias, is that projection, is that something else that just I can't, is this a trauma response, what is it? When I can let all that go and I can trust the goodness that I am bringing forward and that's being asked for and wants to be received, it's one of the ultimate experiences of creativity, of pleasure, and of beauty. This feeling of, wow, the things that I can uniquely access are of service. And each of us can uniquely access some aspect of this human experience in a way that's all of our own. And each of us come here with that knowingness, whether you call it clairvoyance or empathic knowingness, whatever you call it. And it's in some ways trained out of us. There's a level of mistrust in an experience of the world that cannot be proven because it's biased or those other things I was saying. It's not trustworthy. It's not scientific. It's not whatever. And it, for most of my life, I just kind of believed what I was told that yeah, it's okay, cool. I'm glad you can do that. I'm glad you feel that, but it's not like the truth. And and lately, I've really been reckoning with the difference between what's, my own truth and the truth, and they're not the same thing. But s- it's a shame anytime any of us doesn't allow ourselves to feel into what feels true right now, especially when you're receiving feedback that, hey, this is really useful, right? Like if it's something that's in service, it's not about pushing an agenda, and it's definitely not about being right. It's about what's the truest truth that I can access, and let me offer that as one source of information that may give a bit more insight. And let me also be open to hearing what little bit of truth each of us can access that I can't. And so when I do that, and when that is received as helpful, as meaningful, it's that same flood of creativity. It's that same feeling as when I have the lyrical hands or when I'm at the very, very end of someone's life and I'm watching this soul transform and I can't put words to it. The feeling of the lightness of being exactly where I'm meant to be as I am in that moment, it's unparalleled. As I think that's the thing, like, we all want to feel that, the little bit of access that we have in this universe, in this human experience, the little bit that's uniquely ours, that it matters. It's not about it taking over or being the dominant way of seeing things, it's just that it matters. When we talk about belonging, inclusion, it's does what I have to say, is what I bring, is who I am. Does it matter? And to feel that we matter, I mean, our unique creative expression, I mean, that's divine to feel that way. So yeah, that's another place where I notice, okay, cool. When I'm doing my intuitive accompaniment and spiritual accompaniment, and I'm leaning into, gently and generously what it is that I can access, and I can share that in a way that's generative. Like, my gosh, well, I'm like, yep, I want to just do this all the time. And yeah, I wanted to share these with you. It feels actually I can feel that creative energy in my body right now as I'm, commenting, connecting with the different places where creativity is showing up in my life. It feels so good. Yeah, it feels so good. It feels like, okay, cool. This feels true. This feels like goodness to be able to share it with you. So I'm, like always, really curious. Where are you connecting with that feeling of creativity in whatever form in your life? And I would absolutely love for you to share that in the comment section so we can have a conversation. I do read all of the comments and appreciate them. Or to email me at rebecca@togetherinbeauty.com. I'd love to hear more about where creativity, essence shows up in what forms and how it feels and how you come into that contact of feeling and the beauty of what it feels like to be able to express creativity in forms that are, start to become knowable to us in our everyday lives. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. And like I said, though, we will have a series of conversations that continue to, yeah, to get under what do we mean by creativity and how is it showing up in the lives of the people that I know and that will introduce you to, so we can all learn from their experiences and be inspired together. So I hope that you'll tune back in for those episodes in the coming weeks. And until then, I wish for you the courage, the openness, and the gentleness to allow your creativity to come through wherever you are. Thank you for listening to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. To learn more about the podcast, my work, and how I can support you on your journey of spiritual becoming, head over to the Together in Beauty website or email me at rebecca@togetherin beauty.com. It's an honor to accompany you on the journey. A huge thank you to our multi-talented producer and co-creative director, Mapumba Chilambo. To learn more about Mapumba's work as a producer, sound engineer, and musician, check out the show notes for a link to his website at mapumbamusic.com. And as always, many thanks to you, our listeners. None of this would be possible without the energy, encouragement, and vitality that you reflect back to us each week. Until next time, may you walk in beauty.